It's back! After a 9-year hiatus, the Adidas F50 is finally back. But is it any good, or should Adidas have kept the F50 name in the past? Well, in today's video, I'll tell you what the F50 Elite here does well, and also not so well, to hopefully help you decide if you should buy this or the Laceless option in the link to Unisport right up there or in the description. Because, as always, I'm JayMike, and this is my review of the Adidas F50 Elite. So of course, F50 brings back a lot of memories, but in essence, Adidas basically continues where they've left off with the X. Kind of, at least, as we've got a new textile mesh upper with an interesting new tongue construction. And I reckon that they've done pretty well. What you have here is this really thin upper that's obviously coated with silicone on the outside, and then on the inside you have this really soft, intricate, exposed mesh in the forefoot, and then a midfoot that's been coated with silicone on the inside as well. And I'll be honest with you guys, when I first got the boot in hand, you know, it's pretty soft, but it also gave me a hint of that slight plasticky, like, craggling. Not stiffness, so I was a little bit skeptical. Until about, 2 split seconds after I got the boots on my feet, because I've never had an issue with the upper feeling any sort of rigid or stiff. So that's pretty good. And even after just half a session of playing with these, I could really feel how the upper started to break in and softening up and becoming very, very malleable around my foot. To the point where it feels as if the boot just envelops the foot very naturally. And I kind of felt that emphasis on the softer mesh in the forefoot and that slightly stiffer, more sturdy structure in the midfoot here. And I just find it really comfortable, if I'm honest, in this I feel the boot, but I can still wiggle my toes freely kind of way, which is pretty good. And I kind of think of it as a bit of something in between the Crazy Fast Plus and XP Flow 0.1 uppers, which are both boots that I've enjoyed a lot. So, feels pretty good. Now, what's also new is this so-called compression fit tongue, which is basically this kind of floating tongue made of a super thin and pretty stretchy neoprene-like material. But then it also has these so-called, should we call them wings, that go down the side and wrap under the foot. And in turn, it's also been covered with silicone strips to give it a little bit of like support and prevent it from stretching too much. And my initial feel was that it almost feels as if someone is giving you like a gentle, secure hug, where it kind of gives you this supportive sensation of having just an extra thing to hold your foot gently in place. Now, it also made me a bit skeptical because what about the wide-footed people? Will that be a problem? But the tongue is stretchy enough, so it feels as if you need to have a really wide or really flat foot for it to be unpleasant. So that's pretty good at least. Now, also another note on the heel, which I think is actually pretty decent. It hugs your foot pretty well, locks it in nicely right at this point. And then I could have done with a slightly more snug and sculpted fit right up on the heel tab, but it still hugs my heel at least snugly enough, meaning that I can't even squeeze a finger all the way down here. So that's good. Solid heel. The fit is, I'd probably call it nicely sculpted, and I think it's gonna appeal to quite a wide array of different foot shapes because it's got a decent amount of width to it in the midfoot, but it has this nice curve shape to it where the midfoot is a little bit more narrow and there's a good amount of width in the forefoot. Now the toe box here is on the round pointy side, meaning that I personally have a little bit of excess space right here. But overall, I would say that I get this very close and almost anatomically close sensation around my foot, but without it ever being claustrophobic. And I put that down to the really good shape of the boot and the soft materials. And I reckon that it will accommodate for most foot shapes except for like the widest of wide feet out there, at least if you like that relatively snuggish fit. Now personally, I've also had no pressure points, no squeezing, and experienced no of the boot coming apart, so that's pretty good. And overall, it's just been really easy for me to step in and enjoy the boot just very, very quickly. As for size, I went true to size with my usual UK 6.5, 25 centimeters, and the width and the length have been pretty much spot on. So go true to size. Then I should also mention the touch, because Adidas have equipped the F50 upper with something called Fiber Touch. Essentially, it's a lot of micro texturing, giving you this pretty gritty, connected feel on the ball. Now, I wouldn't necessarily call it sticky because it's really not. It's more like this raw, rough sensation on the ball, but it still gives you enough to like feel that you can grab the ball and manipulate it, control it well when you dribble and all that stuff. And for me at least, it gives me that micro confidence boost that's just really, really nice to have. And overall, the touch is obviously, because the upper is so thin, it's very close and very sharp on the ball. And because you have this lovely low pointy toe box, it also feels very sleek and nimble on the ball. Like the old F50s, basically. What you'll probably also have noticed by now is that for the first time in 4 years, Adidas have not made an outsole with a raised toe. So the new tooling here is called the Spring Frame 360, which, as the name implies, puts emphasis on both linear and multi-directional movements. And in order to make sure we get it, Adidas even placed small arrows on the outsole, so thank you for that. But what you get here is both that more aggressive, responsive traction when you push off from these 4 studs in the front, but also the bit more smooth rotational movements from these 4 studs, with a little bit of bite when you change direction and cut from the flatter outside here. But in general, it makes me feel as if they went for a slightly more general appeal rather than this hardcore focus on speed all the way throughout. Now, I'll get back to that, but now you know. Now, I also really liked that feeling of being rolled onto my toes with the raised toe in the previous X's. But to be fair, I enjoy having the flat play back because it just brings you ever so slightly closer to the ground and makes the boot feel arrow-like and nimble and, ballet dancer-like. Like an F50 should. But of course, we're also getting a laceless version of the F50 Elite, called LL, funnily enough, which I feel is much better than the laceless, crazy fast and Speed Portal, at least. And for me, it's kind of getting close to the Speed Flow Plus. So it is really good. Obviously, you get the same tooling and the same upper as on the regular laced F50 Elite, but you have this knit tongue construction instead of the compression fit tongue. There are no laces, which also means that the lockdown won't be as good as in the F50 Elite with the laces, meaning that I'm always gonna be on team laces. But apart from that, I think it's just a really good, solid laceless boot that gives you this very close, sleek, streamlined sensation that it's just an arrow. You get it, right? If you know what I mean, you know what I mean. However, as good as the new F50 may be, there are still a few annoying things that you also need to know about. And the first thing for me is that the studs aren't fully speed focused. It kind of feels as if Adidas already know the F50 will be pretty popular, so they tried to make the stud pattern a bit more mellow and, generally appealing. And cool, I get it, it definitely has its advantages, but it also just compromises on that very powerful feeling of bite when you push off. And that's one of the things I'm looking for in a speed boot, specifically. And in that vein, I don't think that the forefoot stiffness and the snapback feels as powerful as it does in the X Crazy Fast. And honestly, I'm gonna miss that hyper-responsive feel when I push off. Oh, and if you enjoyed that raised forefoot and the feeling of being ready and rolled onto your toes, that is gone. Now, personally, I won't exactly have sleepless nights over it, but some people might.
Hasta la vista, baby.
And finally, why only bring back the F50 name and not Adi Zero? Yeah, I know I'm being super pedantic and it doesn't really matter, but just for the vibes and the lols. But with that said, I just find it extremely hard to be mad at the new F50. It's not perfect, but it's just doing its thing so extremely well. And sure, it might not have these big spectacular pieces of innovation such as a carbon fiber outsole or grip knit on the upper, but as a package, it's just so well made and really enjoyable and easy to like and wear. And if you know me, you'll probably know that I love the Adidas X Speed Flow, and for me at least, this is more or less on the same level as that. It's really good. So F50, It's good to have you back, old friend, and it's a very good, should we call it, restart, Adidas. Just promise me to not mess it up, okay? Please. But guys, what do you think of the F50 being back? Well, let me know in the comment section right down below. Remember that if you want to buy and try this as one of the first people in the world, hit the link to Unisport right over there as always. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel with the notifications on if you're new. And also, if you want to learn some cool new skills with your cool new boots, well, hit the playlist right down there as always. And with those words, I'll be signing off. Cheerio.